This is about the execution cadence. What we're going to be talking about here is you've set your OKRs, you've come up with a plan. Your plan is a one-page plan. You've socialized it with your team, with your colleagues, with your management. You're reasonably happy with it. Everyone's engaged to some degree, and you're ready to start work. Now, when you start work, here's what it looks like. You're basically kicking off your quarter, if you have a quarter, a 3-month period, with an OKR, maybe 2 or 3 OKRs. You're doing some focused work, and by the end of the quarter, you're going to be assessing, well, how did we do compared to what we said we would do? Now, just so you know, that assessment, we're going to get into that in the next video, but that assessment is not critical. It's not about human performance, people's performance. It's about, did we do what we said we would do, and what can we learn from that, and how do we move on going forwards? But for now, let's focus in on this focused work. Let's focus on this focused work. Let's talk about that period of 3 months of what you need to do. The thing you need to do in that period of time is create a cadence, create a execution cadence. And I call this the execution cadence. It's like a drum beat. It's the weekly team meeting. And it's basically that regular beat of meetings and actions that happen that enable you to get things done. And here's what you need to be doing in this meeting. You need to start out, obviously, with most of these meetings like this, you want to start out with wins and learnings. Now, this is not a critical part of OKRs. It's just good meeting practice. Start out, did anyone have any wins for this week? And let's just hear them and celebrate them. Now, you as a leader, you want to be recording those for later because they're going to come in very handy when you're working with anyone else or doing a public speaking situation or an all hands or working with your management or whatever you're doing. You want to capture those wins. Any learnings from this week, you want to celebrate those learnings as well, because learning something new is something really important. And sometimes that's, I learned a new skill, right? And sometimes that's, I learned something more about our business, about our technology, about our customers, whatever we're doing here, right? I learned what works, I learned what doesn't work. Those things are also worth celebrating. So start off with just a couple of minutes of that, just to sort of get a bit of positivity, a bit of good vibes flowing, a bit of good value flowing. It also helps people to understand why we're doing this and what are we aiming for. So it's helping you just remind people what good looks like. The second thing you really want to do here is dig into the data and the anecdotes. Now, what I mean by that is you have, as a business, you have a business running, maybe you have a team, maybe there's a piece of software, whatever it is, there's a thing that's running and you're changing that thing. And your OKRs are really about the change. But the thing that's running, this machine that's running, the business that takes customers with needs and turns them into happy customers, and profit, right? Or at least revenue. You have some numbers on that, some metrics. You should be tracking these metrics on a regular basis. What I recommend you do if you don't is literally just get out an Excel spreadsheet, have every column for every week and every line. It's just some lines for the main metrics that you want to be tracking and track them. And then you're spending some time looking into the metrics of how your machine is running. You're doing this every week. And you're looking at these numbers, and ideally I recommend a table. You can use graphs if you like, but graphs do have a habit of hiding some information and highlighting others. So you use this information, have a look at it and see, well, what's happening in our business? Is something changing? Is something changing that we expected? And you ask these questions, do I know why this is changing? Do I know what's causing the change? What's the input for that output? Is there some other piece of data I could be getting? And this is how, over a period of time, this is how you're starting to learn where your inputs and outputs are. What's the things you control to create the outputs you want to create? So this is a super valuable piece. You want to spend some time digging into just these numbers to understand your business and increase your understanding of your business. Now, the spreadsheet that I talked about is not static. It grows over time. You end up with adding some lines and removing some lines and discovering that we need a moving average here or whatever you're doing here. So you're improving this as you go. And I mentioned anecdotes here. Anecdotes are super important. You want to get some samples of things that have been said by your customers, by your internal stakeholders, by your management, whatever you're doing about what's happening. And these might be praise, there might be criticism, there might be problems, whatever they are. But you want to get those because sometimes your data does not show you reality. And you need to get that reality surfaced in your team and have people understand what reality really is and make sure they work well. So you're spending time on data and anecdotes. This is seeing how the machine is operating. Third thing you do is you look at your progress, problems, and plans. Like, what have we done? Looking at the plan you have, what have we done since last time? Where are we? You don't want to spend a lot of time on that update. What problems do we have? What do we need to solve? And what plans do we have going forward? What do we need to change? We're going to talk about that in more detail. But out of each of these sessions, especially data and anecdotes and your progress, problems, and plans, from those, you're creating actions and you're making decisions. That might be to have another meeting. It might be to you have this execution meeting, this team meeting at the start of the week. You might be triggering off another meeting to solve a particular problem. You might be triggering off a series of tasks, whatever they are. You need to track those things, but this is the meeting that you drive that cadence, that regular drumbeat of here we are, it's another week, things have changed, what's changed, what do we need to do that's different this time going forward? So if you're paying attention, you've noticed that I haven't mentioned OKRs. Now I will get to how OKRs relate to this in just a moment, but I want to dig deeper into this progress, problems, and plans part. In the progress, problems, and plans part, this is really where you're looking at that plan. You're referring to the plan, and your goal with this part of the meeting is to change the plan. You're looking at, are we on track? And you're even asking the question, how do we know if we're on track, and how would we know if we're off track? Trying to dive into what numbers would we have, what pieces of information, what milestones should we be tracking that we're not? Because no matter what OKRs you've set at the start of the quarter, you're going to learn new things during the quarter, and that's fine. You might be looking at the activities coming up in the plan or things that you've just done and asking, well, how does that really help us to achieve our goal, right? You might be asking, is there a better way to achieve our goal? You might be asking, how do we know whether this is the best way? And how do we know we're on track? And finally, you're asking, should we change anything? And of course, from this, you're then changing your plan and iterating on your plan, right? And these changes might require further meetings, further discussions, further problem solving. There might just be tasks to do. There might be changes to the plan, whatever it is. You're doing that in this meeting, and you're making sure that this meeting is driving those changes. Now, as I mentioned, we haven't talked about OKRs. So where are the OKRs in this? We're not sort of going through this objective and this key result. Now what? Now, the reason we're not doing that is because you've already done that. You've gone from your OKR and your key results to a plan, and now you're working on the plan. And what you're doing is you're using the OKR as a North Star, right? So the OKR tells you what helps you make decisions. Use the OKRs to help you make decisions. They're telling you where you're going, where you're trying to get to, and you're looking at your plans, your progress, and the problems you've had, and figuring out, well, given that, what do we need to do in order to get to that North Star, to those OKRs? Now, in some situations, you will have a metric in your key results that can track progress, right? The metric might well be a good input metric, or might well be a leading indicator, and that's great. You should be using that. Some situations, you don't know what the input really is until you do it, right? Sometimes it takes a while to figure that out. And that's what this meeting's all about, is to figure that out. By the way, if you're the kind of team that has a lot of operations, you're an operational team, you do the same thing every week. You've got tickets, for example, you're doing manufacturing work, you'll probably spend a lot more time on your metrics, your weekly metrics and your anecdotes, and spend a lot more time there and a relatively small amount of time on the changes, because that's where the weight of your work is. Whereas if you're a product team, for example, and you're mostly doing change to an existing project, existing machine, an engine, a piece of software, or whatever it is, you'll spend more time on your OKR part, right? On the actual changes you want to make. However, it's really important to make sure that you're aware of your operation, like how your business is running, how your engine is running. So do spend enough time on those metrics, because that's what will inform you to help you set better OKRs in the future and help you make better judgments. So that's basically the weekly cadence meeting, that weekly kickoff meeting. Remember, you've got to talk about the wins, the successes, and the learnings, and share those amongst your team. You want to look into how is the machine that we're building, that we're working on, operating? Have we learned anything from our current operations? And then you look at how the changes you're trying to implement, your OKRs, are driving it through. Those are the three components of that weekly meeting. In the next video, I'm just going to talk briefly about a guide for running a wrap-up meeting at the end of the week, because there is actually something else you need to do at the end of the week.